Okay, my friends, this is going to be fun. This goes 5 years ago. Someone sent this to me this morning. And it says, can anyone scientifically disprove the conspiracy theorist Mudfossil University? He claims to have CAT scan DNA certified on fossilized giants, and it does appear that soft flesh and muscle can turn to stone by exchanging molecules. There is a boot with a limestone foot, which has been CAT scanned. So he understands that. That's a different process, and that's mineralization. I work with a nucleophilic transition, and that's substitution. And that's because everything's been boiled out of it and then brought back in according to what is available and what will bond with what types of actual membranes. The membranes are the key to everything. They don't seem to go away. Everything else does. That's why everything still has a membrane that surrounds it. Okay, so here we go. Can anyone disprove my conspiracy theory about mud fossils and giants and dragons? Well, no, they can't. So this guy says right away, starts away, well, if what he's saying was true, which it obviously isn't, I mean, he's talking about a giant dragon in the Atlas Mountains. Come on. Then he goes on about how this would have to be, and that would have to be, and this would have to be, and that would have to be, which you have meaningless stuff. Well, let's take his considerations into consideration. Okay, so here it is. Come on. It would have to be so big and yada, yada, yada. Well, it was so big. That's not my fault. It just happens to be that way. And it was written in the ancient texts about attacking this giant fish, spitting fire and nastiness at this fish, which was one of the gods that changed himself into a animal trying to hide from Typhon, but Typhon got him. It's all in ancient text. Read Apollodorus 1.6.3, I think it is. And here it is right here. Shown this at least 1,000 times. His throat runs all the way down. He is not only in the Atlas Mountains, he is the Atlas Mountains. And secondarily, he is on these maps. This map is from 1375. And here is Typhon. That's all of North Africa, just like I just showed you. Here's Spain. Here's Italy. Here's the Red Sea. That's him. Now, not only that, here's his throat is cut. See that? And that's true. That's what happened to him. In the ancient text, exactly what happened. And he's there. You can't deny he's there. And his throat is cut. You also can't deny that. You see where the red and the black is? Red and black means blood. This color and this color here, that's not really blood. But red and black, when you see them as pronounced as that, it means it came from actual blood. And it's cut right across there. Right across his throat. And that is his throat, runs up the whole length, all the way up to his head. And he spit all that stuff out against the gigantic fish that's down here. Now you have Google Earth, and you can go back to my videos. I have dozens of videos about this. He runs all the way across North Africa exactly as he is stated in these ancient texts. They know about him. This was no hidden secret. For us, though, we just can't get our eyes big enough to see it. You can't miss it. He says, there's no way to miss this. None, zero. Those are all dragon scales. You see that? Those are all dragon scales. And you run them right straight down his throat. Again, shown it way too many times. Either you see it or you don't. It's up to you. There's a gigantic fish. His flesh is being eaten into. And if you want to get a biology lesson about vascular nature, here it is. Arteries, blood vessels, capillaries, veins, everything. The whole 9 yards. You can even see where the lymph ducts have been invaded. All right, if you want to read this, you can read it. It makes, it's just his opinion. It would have taken 6,000 years for this, and then 10,000 years for that, and 2,000 years for this, and on and on and on. So much for him. Dude, you missed the entire paradigm. Soft tissues fossilization in mere decades. This is true now. Rather than decades, it would take a little time to learn his hypothesis and how he got his conclusions. But if you take the time to learn it, I guarantee you won't be blowing many holes into his theories. So this guy is on my side, rad tad. Nor his methodologies, because he totally adheres to the scientific method, which I do. And as hard as it is to realize that a lot of what you would have bet your life on previously, turns out it was all bullshit. Kind of ruins your day. Well, this guy, good job, my friend. Excellent. Excellent. So, comprehensive says, you're not suggesting the dragon fossil is real, are you? Any idea the weight of this thing? It's a gigantic mountain. What can I tell you? I'll assume it would need to eat at least 2% of its body weight each day. And then he go on, we need this, we need that. Everybody knows this and everybody knows that. Honestly, to not believe a dinosaur would be ridiculous. They just arguing about no answers to anything. This is good, chewy. We get a lot of stuff from them. From my dog Nero. Can anybody disprove me? No. But from obsessively studying mud fossils for 2 years, 2 months in Philadelphia, I can tell you that I have no doubt Roger Spurr is exactly right from what I've had gathered. Thousands of rocks, it seems to me that every single rock was or is a creature's body part that have turned to stone from a process called nucleophilic substitution invasion. I have zero doubt he is correct. Right on, Boopsie. What a waste of 2 years. See, this is the kind of stuff you get. Diligent. He has no idea. I'm sure he hasn't watched any of this stuff. Roger Spurr discovered mud fossils, the process that created them during a great flood event, covered the earth in hot water, rich silicates, deep siliceous oozes. That's 100% correct. Process is called nucleophilic invasion and substitution, which replaced biological matter with silicates, trapping the biology in the fossil fuel. Manuel Velikovsky wrote about the event in his book called Worlds in Collision. Exactly correct. Thank you, Wild. Your Emmanuel comes from the time when lobotomies were accepted treatment. See, this is the kind of stuff you get. If you accept Velikovsky's events happened, there'd be either no moon or an eclipse orbit. It's amazing. Yeah, I believe the guy Roger. The Bible, I definitely believe in it. It states some interesting statements. There was giants in those days, and so in other words, in favor. If you ever get a chance, read the Book of Enoch. I agree with that. Well, let's think about it a moment. Roger handles the rocks and gets the DNA and gasps. They find human DNA on the rock. Shocking. Well, listen, they're dry. The reason is I clean it, then I drill deep inside of it, and I take what comes out from inside, not from what I put on my surface. Another one of these dry statements. Now let's see what Juicy says here. It's really easy. You perpetuify a mythological creature or human by making them drink mineral water solution that bind great with volcanic ash and silica, but the solution doesn't kill them right away. It poisons them in a way the meat of the creature is easier to cut, so when it comes time for curing, yikes. Okay, I'm not sure I agree with Juicy Jessie here, but I believe she's correct that you can transition meat into actual stone. Now she's saying it makes it easier to cut, and in 7 days instead of 60,000 years it would be hardened naturally. All you would need is a volcano, which coincides close to every megalithic structure. Well, this I don't buy any of that, to be perfectly honest with you, Juicy. However, the transition of mud fossils did happen because of boiling hot water for a very long extended period of time. One of the universities, well, Smithsonian, claimed a year at least, and it just cooked everything out of the fiber, which is basically the collagens. And they preserved, collagen preserved the fossilization because the other stuff just came back in when it dried up. And it mingled in with the silicates that had to come up from the salacious ooze down in the bottom of the ocean, because we almost got hit by Venus. And actually, I think we did get hit. And I think it hit the Grand Canyon. And that's what ripped it right down to the guts. Vermilion Cliffs is just nothing but a pile of guts. Now, to address the DNA test, there was 3 samples done. And these were the DNA extractions and testing and very, very sophisticated PCR testing. Now, I'm not going to show the name of the company that did it. It's very, very respected, and they got slapped for doing it by all their friends. So all of this, very, very, very well done. I had to check for negative controls, and there was no problems. It was well harvested, and from a clean sample inside, drilled inside, and then it was all the PCR testing was done, and then matched to the national databases, Homo sapien, mitochondrial cytochrome gene, and the D-loop region. And it was, the DNA was excellent quality DNA was obtained by the 36-inch sample and the lung. I mean, it's virtually like blood. And when they did the sampling, they could actually see all the CTAG things that are going on here. And this tells you that this was a Homo sapien, actually modern human being. And it was dense DNA. There was no. When I talked to him, I said, "Is there any chance this just could get contamination?" He said it was extremely dense. Here's right here. Somewhere around here it says it was excellent quality. So it says somewhere, it said excellent quality DNA was, and it was basically like raw blood. Excellent quality DNA. sequences were obtained from both the 36-inch sample and the lung. The 36-inch tip was gigantic fingertip, and the lung was just a normal-sized lung, but it was still a mud fossil. And that's what they were. All right, I think I've addressed the issues, and I'm saying that I am Roger Spurr, and I am the one that discovered mud fossils, and I'll gladly discuss my evidence with any doubter that is an expert. And Yale agrees with my research and wrote a paper a year after I reported this to Derek Briggs at Yale University. They wrote exceptional preservation of soft body tissues or atacarobiota from silica-rich oceans. And here's where they announced it on campus in one of their papers. Cementing a theory about sea creatures of the atacarobiota. These were supposed to be the earliest living creatures that there was. No bones, no teeth, nothing. And this is a year after I reported all this stuff to Eric Briggs. And they wrote this is the earliest community, and they say it was a quirk in the chemistry because it had all this silica, and that happened because of the silica ooze that hits the floor because it's heavy, 2.5 times heavier than water. It coats the ocean floor. When we got hit by Venus, it all came up. And it just tells everything. It says that many of them outright bizarre. And this was before there was any kind of, the animals themselves were entirely soft bodies. They lived before evolution of shells, teeth, bones. No, that's just not true. Maybe where they were finding slimy little creatures. But here, I have, obviously, no question whatsoever, body parts of other creatures, and they are DNA tested, and they are CAT scanned. And it was the dissolved silica that enabled to transform the things within hours or years, rather than millions of years. And they said it was a worldwide event, worldwide. And here's the guy right here, Derek Briggs, the same guy I presented all my stuff to, that was the author of this paper. And this was paid for by the National Science Foundation, and a lot of it was paid for by NASA, because I explained to NASA about a year earlier than this paper was written that they had the same stuff on Mars. And they do. They have the exact same stuff as they do here, which are mud fossils on Mars. Mars was virtually the same as Earth. And I have all the evidence of that too. And apparently they went to Yale and said, is this guy right? Because I was pretty forceful in my email. And I have that email. I could show it to you. Now, don't forget, I reported this again. I was to NASA, and here's why. I said, this is not continually over millions of years ago, this up here on Mars. This is muscle sarcomeres, these little blocks. And all of the dried stuff has just sort of, powdered off. There's no rain or anything. There's no erosion here. It's just sort of worked its way out from being bombarded by, solar radiation. There's no atmosphere basically to speak of. So this is not millions of years. This is the thing. Whatever it was, is when it died, it started to decompose. That's what that is, and that's up on Mars. Now, let me show you the Mars crab. Here's the Mars crab. Wherever here it is right here. You see that? They thought, wow, what is that? And these are the legs. And that little spot up at the top is the other part of it. That's the vein coming back this way. That's the artery going in, pushing blood everywhere through these little vessels. And here it is actually in the sarcomeres. These are muscle sarcomeres as well. It's a gigantic creature. Just like here on Earth, the same thing. No difference whatsoever. None. Zero. Although this preserved exceptionally well because it got rid of all the watery stuff that would just turn that into mud. And it just dusted off. See? And that's muscle, which is this. This is what muscle is right here. These are blocks of muscle, sarcomeres. Now if they just dried off and powdered out, you'd have the strong parts would be left, but all the powdery stuff would go away. That's heart muscle. All right, now I'm going to show you something that they brought back from Bennu. This right here, which is heart muscle. This is the bundles of the muscle coming this way. And they just cut it basically that way. These are what they look like when you look down at them. This is heart muscle. And this is the membrane that surrounded the heart. They had to go through the membrane, grab a hold of that muscle, and came back to Earth with it. And there it is right here. And it has every single chemical signature, all the biology, the DNA, the RNA, every bit. And here's what they look like. And those are those blocks. And if you cut this and looked into it, you'd see all these little tangly looking things, which is just exactly what I showed you. Which is this right here. These are blocks. And cut down this way, looking into the fibers, there's what they look like. And it's got all the, it's everything. There's nothing missing here. They said, oh, it must have been like a chemical cocktail of all kind of life, and maybe it brought some here. No, because I can tell you what, it is a heart, and even when you look at it, it's a heart. You see this? This is psyche. It's another heart. They're going there right now. There's one of the, tubing coming out of there. There's another one. All these are the chemical, the colors of blood, the red, the black, and the yellow. These are valves. Huge valves in a heart. And all the rest of the plumbing pops off. And here's what it looks like after all this stuff pops off. It just pops off. It's just basically glued on there, and there's a gluey stuff. Pops off. You end up with some tendon, which is this stuff. And then underneath, which is all this stuff, which is the valves. And looking straight down at this, that's it. That's what you got right there. Now that's psyche. That's another heart. The other one is this one here, which is Bennu. And these are the valves for Bennu. Look at the size. These are huge heart valves. And they landed on here and brought something back to Earth. And the stuff they brought back, I just showed you, is this. Muscle sarcomeres. You can see the bundles where they were, cardiac muscle. This is called the phosphate surprise, this white stuff. They had no idea what that would be there. That's from the membrane. Membranes are loaded with phospholipid membranes. Then they found a gum, sugary gum the other day. And all that is this. It's a sarcoplasmic reticulum. It's on top of these sarcomeres. And they go with it. And it's that gum that they discovered just a few days ago. And that works with the muscle. There's zero chance that this could be wrong. There's 100% certainty what it is. So I don't know why they won't admit it. Now this right here is where they actually landed. Now these pictures, these are really literally pictures basically of what was there. These aren't artist renditions because they actually were here. That thing touched down, grabbed a chunk of this stuff and came back. That black on top of this yellow and red is exactly what you expect to see. A complete separation between the black and the red. All right, and they grabbed the chunk and they came back to Earth with it. And this is, they found all of this stuff. They found all of these things. All the genetic codes, molecular compounds, RNA, all that stuff. Everything that we have in us, they found. 100%. Zero is missing. And they won't admit to it. I don't think that's good science. I think they should at least be talking about it. And they won't talk about it. That's what it was right there. Okay, I guess I'll leave it at this, but this could have been well over $1 billion, and this is National Science Foundation, Smithsonian, all of them. How can we better understand? This is a multi-scale analysis of asteroid Bennu. Well, they haven't talked a bit about the things that I've claimed. They've said yes, absolutely, all those things are true. It's all biology, but it's just biology. I think they call it a broth. It's like all just little bits and pieces in a broth. No, it isn't. It's exactly what I showed it. It's a heart. And that's one of the heart valves. I think that one's there and one's here. It looks kind of scruffy, but they're headed to Psyche as well, which is another heart. And that's this one here. This one's got tubes coming out of it. And again, this is not an artist's rendition. They're headed there. They know what it looks like. They know what colors are here. And this thing is absolutely stunningly large. All right, this is what they can't get their head around. Now, I showed you the Mars crab. This is what that would be. These are little arteries, and they're coming out to service all the blood for the muscle. These are the muscle sarcomeres. This here to here is tendon. Almost no muscle, no blood. You don't need blood for that. That's why it's brown. There's just nothing there. But the muscle, you use a lot of blood. And it's just leaking down into here. Now, up on Mars, it still had the crab legs sticking out, which would have been coming out of here. Same thing with these. They'd be hanging over every direction. But the key is that they have to get that blood into all the muscle cells here, into the skeletal muscle. Otherwise, it won't do. And the harder you work, the harder it pumps, and the more blood flushes through there. So you have to be able to absorb that blood. Now, up on Mars, they could actually see, in addition to knowing it's there, you could actually see it, the legs of it. See, that's what happens with the arteries. They have all their legs sticking into different tissue to pump blood into it. And you can see it right there. So these things are just like they are here on Earth. We have them just as big here on Earth. I know I've shown you, and you've seen Typhon. And I don't know what kind of creature this was. It's just a muscle. For me, that's just an anatomical part. It's a muscle. After that, who knows?